like we have a full council here. Sherry Moore is at the helm, ready to drive us through this and get our recording started.
Should pop up anytime now. There we go.
Okay, wonderful. All right, we have a full agenda, so I will call the St. Paul City Council to order. Roll call.
Naker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Tao.
Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Council President Brenmon.
Here.
7 present, no one absent.
Please stand and join Rebecca Naker as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 2 through 17 are before you for your consideration.
All right, and I understand that item 16 needs to be taken separately. Is anything else, should anything else be taken for separate consideration? All right, seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves the balance of the consent agenda. Roll call.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item 16 is Resolution 21-1173, supplementing the general resolution with supplemental resolution relating to sewer revenue bonds and providing for the issuance of sewer revenue and refunding bonds Series 2021F and taking other required actions.
All right, and we're taking, get a little sneak preview of this morning at our budget meeting. We're taking this item separately so that Mr. Solomon may fill in the blanks and give us a report. I know you sent a summary to the council in advance of the meeting, but so that we can accurately pass a resolution that contains the good news, the very good news that you shared with us today for the sewer bond. So I'll turn things over to Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Council President Brenmo and council members. Mike Solomon from the city's Office of Financial Services. I'm here to present the results of our Series 2021F sewer revenue bond sale. These bonds finance our annual sewer improvement program, about $8 million in capital improvements to our system, as well as refinancing our 2011 and 2013 bonds. The good news is led by our credit rating. The sewer utility carries its own AAA rating separate from the city's general obligation rating, and that AAA rating was reaffirmed. Rates also remain at historic lows, and those two things combined for very positive sale results today. We had 7 bidders that bid on our bonds, and the spreads between the bids were very tight, only 0.1% from the lowest bid to the highest. That really means a good result for the city, and Robert W. Bayard & Co. was our best bidder with a true interest cost of 1.35%. That's for 20-year bonds backed solely by revenues of the sewer utility. So that we believe that's our lowest ever interest rate for this credit. With the refinancing portion of the deal, we were able to realize interest cost savings of more than $2.7 million. So that's more than 25% of the debt service over the remaining life of the bond. So really significant debt service savings, and that helps the utility keep rates affordable into the future for ratepayers. Want to, of course, say thanks to our team in OFS and Public Works with the sewer utilities involvement on this one, especially our city debt manager, Sarah Brown, who leads our efforts here, as well as our consultants that help to price the deal. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, otherwise recommending approval of the resolution to award the bonds.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for so often coming with great news like this. These are numbers that are really unprecedented, and I appreciate the work, as you said, that the entire team put into making this possible. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay, just seeing thumbs up and smiles, so that looks like it's probably going to pass. Um, all right, so thank you very much again for the great report. On behalf of the council and our community members, we really truly appreciate it. Ms. Prince will move the resolution. Any discussion? Roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended. Item 18, Resolution 21-1157, directing the city clerk to notify the county auditor to place an initiative regarding whether to adopt the proposed residential rent stabilization ordinance on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot and approving the title and language for that ballot question.
All right, and I'm trying to look at my colleagues, but a pop-up box went right over you all. I think that we have a basic understanding of this, but if it would, for the record, I think it'd be helpful to have our city attorney's office give us a quick explanation of this item on the agenda and what the next steps are and what we can expect. Ms. Tierney, are you able to give us a quick summary?
I think so. So this is before you, as you know, we received a petition. I don't have the dates on the top of my tongue, but we received a petition to put this on the ballot. The petition was sufficient. The council made that finding some time ago. And so now what needs to happen next is for the council to approve the language that will actually be printed on the ballot for voters to vote on. That needs to be to Ramsey County by, I think, the 20th, which is Friday. So today, this language needs to be approved. The title and the language have been approved by my office, and so it is before the council for your consideration. I'm happy to answer more specific questions if you have them.
All right, are there questions for Ms. Tierney? All right, and in this particular process, I think that council's had a far lesser role than in other ballot initiatives, and really, to me, in a lot of ways, it feels like a pass-through. And we're just making sure that we go through the mechanics to make sure it gets on the ballot appropriately based on the petition signatures. So I do not see questions from my colleagues. So thank you for that summary on the fly. We appreciate it, Ms. Tierney. And Ms. Naker would move approval. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince, Councilmember, you're on mute.
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 19, Resolution 21-1179, authorizing the city to transfer $3,507,000 of American Rescue Plan funds to specific accounts to address ARP administration and other needs to respond to the public health emergency and its negative economic impacts and provide government services.
Thank you. And I believe Laura Logston and John McCarthy are here with a staff report.
Hi, council members, council president, and council members. Sorry, it took me a second. My screen switched when I started sharing. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? Okay, great. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me today. For the record, my name is Laura Logston. I'm with the Office of Financial Services. I'll provide an overview of Resolution 21-1179 that's before you today. It allocates $3.5 million of American Rescue Plan funds for a series of needs that address responding to the public health emergency and its negative economic impacts, the provision of government services, and the administration of these American Rescue Plan funds. The proposals in this resolution cover a series of needs, including staffing up to administer the ARP funding, restoring positions cut due to the pandemic. That includes libraries, parks, and the fire position you see listed here. Bringing on staffing for needed positions and investments that are also funded in the 2022 mayor's proposed budget. That includes the library, parks, fire, law enforcement, career path academy, and the Office of Neighborhood Safety items. And finally, a few items that are more recently emergent needs, including the River Center ramp, council technology for investment in hybrid capabilities, vaccine incentives, and the DSI positions to address a backlog in permits and licensing. In the next few slides, I will provide some more details about each of those items. So first, the ARP administration item includes $850,000 in 2021 to cover staff and contractor costs associated with administering the ARP funding. There are significant procurement, federal compliance, grants management, and financial work that the city is really unable to perform adequately until we hire staff to work on administration of these funds. So that's what this amendment would help allow us to do starting in 2021. The mayor's proposed 2022 budget also includes $3 million of ARP funding to continue to cover the costs of administration. And that would cover 20 FTEs, including staff in OFS, such as accountants, budget, and grant staff, an attorney in the city attorney's office, and then procurement staff in HERO and staff in HR. The next item in the amendment would allocate $1.7 million for immediate maintenance needs at the River Center ramp. This includes repairs to beams and columns, concrete work throughout the ramp, a comprehensive review of deterioration, and replacing a failing security and emergency notification system. This item has particular urgency because the concrete work needs to be completed when temperatures are still warm. And as we know in Minnesota, that means that there's really only a short period of time left to do that work and when it could be completed successfully. Additionally, the procurement process will need to take place once this amendment is approved, and that can be pretty lengthy. So the ability to complete this work this year is dependent on the time frame within which this item can move forward. Next, the amendment restores funding for both library and parks positions that were reduced in 2021 due to the pandemic. We understand that both of these are council priorities, so we wanted to make sure to get these in front of you as soon as possible. The $240,000 for libraries allows for a phased-in approach to bring back 12.5 FTE library staff and hours from September through December of 2021. And then the mayor's proposed 2022 budget also includes ARP funding for these 12.5 FTEs. Similarly, the amendment includes $230,000 for Parks and Recreation to restore rec center and aquatic hours. This extends rec center and aquatic hours for the remainder of 2021, and it also covers costs associated with aquatics restoration that has already occurred this summer. As with libraries, the mayor's proposed 2022 budget continues ARP funding for this restoration into 2022, which covers 24.93 FTEs. The next item in the budget amendment includes $10,000 for equipment needs in council conference rooms to allow for hybrid meetings, which we understand is an immediate need as the city continues to work in a pandemic environment. Next, the amendment allocates $181,000 for DSI customer service specialists to address backlogs in permits and licensing that currently exist. This is an item that we've heard raised up by council recently as really an immediate need, so we wanted to recognize that as well. This would allow the department to hire 2 specialists. One of those would be funded just through 2021, and then the second would be funded through 2022. It also covers some costs associated with overtime that DSI has has had to use to work at this backlog and to, overall to not further delay construction and business activity or prevent employment in these areas. The $50,000 for a vaccine incentive program is in partnership with Ramsey County and would provide a $50 gift card to people who receive a vaccine at a Ramsey County Public Health vaccination clinic starting August, I think it's starting August 13th. Yeah, sorry, I just saw my date and I saw that date and my mind stopped, starting August 13th. So the urgency around this request is due to the resurgence of COVID and the Delta variant and the need to vaccinate as many people as possible as we're seeing that resurgence impact our community. The county program is generally more accessible to residents than the state incentive program is. Folks receive a gift card as soon as they are vaccinated at a Ramsey County Public Health Clinic versus the state program where you have to submit an online application once you have received your vaccine, and then you are mailed a gift card within 5 weeks. Ramsey County is holding a series of vaccine clinics in the coming weeks at a variety of locations throughout St. Paul, including Arlington Hills and Oxford Community Centers, Harding High School, and Washington Tech Magnet School. And there are pop-up clinics in various locations, including the Consulate of Mexico and the YWCA. The fire EMS supervisor.
Ms. Logston, before you move on, I of course am supportive of any efforts to get more people vaccinated, but I am curious, and perhaps this is a John question or someone else can answer, but St. Paul Ramsey County has a combined public health entity, and Ramsey County collects taxes from St. Paul residents. So I'm trying to understand why we're also funding Ramsey County Public Health in this initiative. It seems like something that St. Paul residents already are funding.
Council President and council members, that's a great question. It's certainly something we can follow up with emergency management on, and understanding what sorts of conversations have been happening between the county and the city. My understanding is the discussions have been specifically around using the ARP funds, which the county and the city have both received separate allocations. The city's allocation of ARP funds is more than the county's allocation, and so I think there's just been an agreement to go in on this program together as partners. But we can certainly follow up and try to find some more specific information on that.
I appreciate that. I know that we've had conversations about using our funds to support community groups that are doing this outreach, but I was a little bit surprised to see we were chipping in for gift cards. So, and Mr. McCarthy, it looked like you were going to say something. I see Ms. Yang and Mr. Tao have hands up as well.
Council President Bremo, and I would just agree with everything Ms. Logsdon said, and that we can track, we can follow up with Director Shute, who's been the kind of lead point person working with Ramsey County Public Health on this. But yeah, would offer that it is funded fully through ARP, and so it was a joint effort, as Ms. Logsdon noted.
All right, thank you for that, Ms. Yang.
Thank you. My question is, do you know if other cities are also contributing and funding into the vaccine incentive program as well? Because I know that this is something that would benefit like all folks in Ramsey County, and it benefits folks in St. Paul, which is great. But I think that with the collaboration, if we can get that, that's even better too.
I'm not aware if other cities are contributing, but that's something that we'll follow up with as well.
And Mr. Tao, did you have yeah, Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. I guess what I'm trying to understand is that if we don't really know how this program works and how this money is going to be given out to people, why do we have to pass it today? Doesn't it make sense for us to fully understand, and there's actually accountability? We're not duplicating this program before we put the money into it.
Council President and Councilmember Tao, thank you for that question. I think the Ramsey County has said publicly on their website, this is a separate program from what the state is doing. It's being run differently. It's much more accessible than the state program is. Initially, when this was set up, the start date for the county program of August 13th was the end date of the state program. Recently, the state has extended their program, but I think the county has already set up their program. They've already got it going. And so I think the intention is not necessarily to duplicate what's happening elsewhere, but to provide a service that's extremely accessible to residents of Ramsey County. And they've been, advertising this. They're holding these clinics at various locations. So, so it's kind of off and running, and they're really hoping to immunize as many people as possible because of the surge.
Thanks.
You said it was, if I remember correctly, it was 50,000, right?
That's correct, 50,000. I believe Ramsey County is also putting in 50,000. The way the program has been advertised is that the gift cards are available until resources end. That's sort of a similar model to what the state did. They initially put in, I think, a certain amount of money, and then they had so much interest that they then put more money into it and extended it. But right now, the city contribution is 50,000.
Okay, so it looks like divided by 50, that's about 1,000 members of the community. So what happened if this nobody gave us today with this program? The money's not spent.
Council President and Council Member, my assumption is if the money is not spent, then it would be returned to us. We would set up, we're in the process, the city is in the process of setting up an agreement with the county so that we would be providing these resources to the county. And if they're not spent on the specific purpose for which the agreement is outlined, then we would take those funds back and we would be able to reallocate them for something else that's eligible under ARP.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tao, for the clarifying questions, and thank you, Ms. Yang. I think we should ask that question more often. So thanks for teeing it up. It is Ramsey County is made up of many cities, and while we are 56% of Ramsey County, the benefit of other cities participating is definitely something that we should call out. So I really, really appreciate that comment. Ms. Logston, I apologize. You were totally on a roll, but we had some questions. So thanks for letting us butt in for a few.
Thank you, Council President, and no need to apologize. These are great questions. So the next item is the Fire EMS Supervisor. This would allocate $40,000 of ARP funds to cover the 2021 costs of restoring one position that was cut from the 2021 budget due to COVID. This position specifically allows for support for the EMS services that are delivered to residents. And fire has really elevated this as an immediate need because of the resurgence of COVID and the Delta variant, and just their ability to provide this service effectively to community members during this surge and to be able to plan for future waves and surges of COVID. Similar to some other items, this is one that is also funded in the mayor's 2022 proposed budget through the general fund. And then finally, the last two items that are included in the budget amendment are also ones that would be covering just the 2021 costs, and then the 2022 ongoing costs are proposed to be covered with general funds in the proposed budget. The first is the Law Enforcement Career Path Academy. This would provide $181,000 to cover the costs of participant salaries from September through December of this year. The LECPA program begins in September with 20 participants, and it runs through August of 2022. Like I said, the program is fully funded in the general fund in the mayor's proposed budget starting in January. However, the police department does not currently have a funding source to cover the salary costs for the participants in the program this year. So the specific expense of salaries that we would be covering with ARP funds previously was covered with federal AmeriCorps funding, which is no longer a viable option for funding the program because it also relied on having private philanthropic contributions that have ended. And then finally, the amendment includes $25,000 to cover the 2021 cost of bringing on staff for the Office of Neighborhood Safety. Again, the 2022 proposed budget includes full funding for this office in the general fund. The intention with using this amount of ARP funding is to be able to bring on a staff person prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year so that the office can really be prepared to start operations when the full funding is available. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. This is more of a comment based on the presentation than a question, so I can hold off if others have questions first, but I didn't see any. Okay. So I really appreciate the presentation, and I just, last time we were presented with a budget amendment for American Rescue Plan dollars, I said, and I think others of us here said, that we really did not want to keep spending American Rescue Plan dollars this way, in this kind of piecemeal fashion, that we really wanted to be doing this based on one coherent strategy. And there are things that were just presented that I desperately want to fund today. And I know, I'm sure that's true with all of us, and maybe different things that we each want to fund, but I really feel that we cannot continue spending this transformational amount of money in dribs and drabs as we have been doing. And so I think that we owe ourselves the time to develop that coherent strategy that all our decisions can flow from after that point. I know the mayor proposed his recommendations in his budget last week. We're working on our response right now, and we plan to submit that by the end of this week. And my hope is that that'll allow us to get to that one shared strategy for, again, $166 million. So my proposal, I would move that we lay this matter over for a week to allow us that time. Again, knowing that there are things that I and others of us would like to pass today, but I think that might be the most logical approach.
Thank you, Ms. Naker. Mr. Tolbert.
I support that motion as well. I think that makes sense let's be thoughtful about this. I agree. I mean, I think we all want the library and parks funding a month ago, but I think we can plan accordingly that is very likely to pass. The one thing I would like, and I know the PD director sent a memo on the River Center ramp, but I just think we need to have a path going forward. As people here know, I fought to get those nets on there as a Visit St. Paul board member, and I continue to think we'll need this $1.7 million, and I'm not opposed to it because I know there are maintenance issues that need to be done. So I will support that eventually, but I would like to see, since PD is taking over the River Center ramp, and I think going to do a new RFP after we've already done one, I'd like to see kind of what the timeline on that is, so that we don't have to just keep putting money into capital maintenance on a 50-year-old ramp. So next week, I suspect this is going to be laid over. So if next week, if they can prepare that information going forward, not just the history of the ramp, I think that would be very helpful. Many of us have been very involved in this, so we know the history pretty well. And I just would like to see something moving sooner than later.
Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I'll support the motion. I really appreciate Councilwoman Naker's comments, and I wanted to just add a couple of reactions that I had upon receiving information about this budget item that lead to part of why I really do care about giving us the time, is to be able to get questions and additional information. I'm personally questioning including items that support police funding alongside items that support a new, more holistic community safety strategy. The Office of Neighborhood Safety is a huge priority. I think it is very well supported by this council, and we were told and received communication in various forms that we'd be asked to approve it sooner. And I really expected that would mean it would get its own presentation, it would get its own due and explanation, rather than kind of being bundled with a bunch of other things. I was a little taken aback by that, but I look forward to supporting ONS. I just wanted to share that I thought that was a bit odd. And additionally, the Law Enforcement Career Path Academy has an admirable goal. It also does not really meet those goals a lot of the time. I've been asking questions about the way that we actually matriculate folks from that program into SPPD, and it's my understanding only 8 people of diverse backgrounds have actually become a part of SPBD, even though we've invested hundreds and thousands of dollars into this program through federal funds and other sources. And so I believe that getting extra time to review something like that would be more appropriate. And I recognize it does have support within this council, but I also think it is fair to ask questions about the effectiveness of funding that initiative. So there's other things in this amendment that I have questions about, but this time will allow us to do that. I'll support the layover, but I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that I think are important to speak to. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Yang.
Thanks, Council President. I also support the layover as well. I think having more time to talk about this and decide together how we want to move forward is really important. In terms of the line item on vaccination incentives or just vaccination work overall, I just want to be really clear. Like, we've already talked a lot about how important it is to grant money out to organizations, especially organizations that do work within our Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, because they are the ones who have really deep relationships with our communities and have that trust to be able to share with them about how important vaccinations are and be able to guide folks to getting vaccinated as well. And so I don't think it's a question of, hey, do we want to do it? It's more about, let's crunch the numbers and let's make it happen. And the council here, I know a majority, if not all, already really support that and have voiced that. And so I feel like we are ready to talk about the entire pie and not just pieces. And so I'm ready to start working toward that and hope that we will get there too with this layover here.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Yang. Other comments? There's a lot of support for a 1-week layover. Ms. Prince.
And much has already been said that I agree with. Again, we were clear last time that this is not the way we as a council want to be handling the American Rescue Plan funding in $3 million every couple of weeks. I'm very supportive of many of the things on this resolution, and not to go into detail, but LECPA, the Law Enforcement Career Path Academy, is definitely one of them. I think it's critically important that we get Parks and Library funding to them so that they can staff up before the end of this year. But I think it's critically important that the council send a message to the administration that we need to work together, that we are not on separate teams, we're on the same team, and that this $166 million in federal funding is a tremendous opportunity that we have. And all of the wards that we represent have been letting us know how they would like us to be thinking about that funding. And we need to bring those messages together and do this as a group with the administration. So I support the 1-week layover.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Prince, and for your comments as well. And I just support the 1-week layover as well. I appreciate that extra time. I would just like to look to Mr. McCarthy or Ms. Logston to talk, if you could just maybe walk us through the items. I agree with comments I've heard from many of my colleagues about understanding kind of the holistic plan. And we did get a presentation as kind of intertwined with the budget address from the mayor last week that gave us a very loose framework of what this looks like. And I think that's progress. And as Ms. Naker was saying, we're looking forward to sharing our kind of response and vision to that this week. But there's still work to go to fill in. And so we're going to really encourage us to use this. I mean, 1 week is not a lot of time. I don't think that we're going to have a whole plan nailed down in 1 week, but we have to start working on this today so that we're not organizing on Wednesday afternoon next week. Like, this is a very short timetable. And because of that, I think it would be helpful if Mr. McCarthy or Ms. Logston, if you could just go through the items and let us understand why these are urgent and why they're coming before us today as opposed to later as part of a more holistic, here's where all the dollars are going from and why, so that we understand the urgency or can make a valued decision on that as well. if that would be possible on the fly.
Yeah, Council President Brenmo, thanks for the question. I think I understood the comments and hear the council's preference for a layover. I think as we look at this list and think about urgency here, the things that jump out at me that are particularly urgent are the River Center ramp repairs, which we had wanted to get in front of the council a few weeks back, but it took a little bit longer to get that one in front of you. We were at a point now where that is concrete work that needs to be done this season, and as Ms. Logsdon noted, the procurement process takes time, and that is work that even 1 week delay further challenges the ability to get that work done still this construction season. And DSI recently inspected that facility, and we've got to make sure that we're maintaining it so that we can continue to get our own certificate of occupancy for that facility and keep that ramp open. The vaccine incentives, as Ms. Logsdon noted, that program is envisioned to be underway. We would have to review with Ramsey County Public Health if this contribution would still be needed, or if they're going to have to go at sort of without our contribution. So we can come back to you next week with better information on that, but it's very possible that we would have missed the boat on that program. The administration of the team administering this grant, this is something that we've talked about since the very beginning of ARP. Right now, it is literally Ms. Logsdon with some additional folks kind of helping out on a part-time basis. And even Ms. Logsdon is also a budget analyst for the police department and the public works department. So this is really a one-person shop who's trying to do all of the work that you all are requesting. And so we really need to staff up in this area so that we don't make mistakes, that we are in compliance with the really strict federal guidelines around this, that we're following the contracting rules, that we've got concrete eligibility review from our city attorneys dedicated to this work. And the longer we delay that, the more we risk making mistakes and missing out on things like that. I think the other ones, as we noted, a lot of these are starting back up in the 2022 budget. Those are the three that jump out at me as sort of the ones that are most urgent. I think with the LACPA program, we could potentially, figure out a way to sort of muddle through for another week and continue that program. But those, like I said, unless Ms. Logsdon has others that she would want to highlight, are the ones that are most concerning to me about delays. And happy to answer additional questions on these as we go forward here.
Can you just clarify when you said with the River Center ramp, if we're unable, I think it's a good context about procurement, and then also contractors are busy this year. And so even if we get funds, we have to also get bids and get someone working on the job. If you said that if we are unable to do this work this fall, that we may have to close the ramp, and that would then be closed until springtime when we could put down concrete again.
And Council President Brenmo, I know Mr. Hubenbecker is on the call as well, and he may be able to answer additional specifics around the ramp project and the need for that urgency. I think it'd be, good, great. I see him coming off mute here.
Yep, Council President Brenmo and council members. We had our certificate of occupancy inspection recently. And in the correction notice, some of the items that we're talking about here, structural repairs to the ramp and the beams, were included with that. There's a reinspection coming up, and after this, I was going to prepare a memo to DSI listing items and our timeline. We communicated that we've applied for these funds, and that is how we repair it. That was on the correction notice on those items. So, and that is the urgency, as I said, is we're trying to get these done before winter, because last year with RFP process, we didn't do any of them. And now with COVID, and now this year we're trying to catch up on those. And so, that is a concern on the urgency is trying to get this bid out and get it, hopefully get bids on it and get those back as quick as we can and get the repairs done.
So my question was, if it doesn't get done if we are unable to do this now this fall, including the procurement, then does it close for the winter?
Well, that's a potential. I mean, if we don't get the, if we can't get the C of certificate of occupancy and correct items, I mean, that's going to be DSI's call, but they noted these items in their inspection. So obviously it's a concern to them. It's just other things that our consulting engineer identified earlier in the year. So these are, I mean, it's not the prize item, but it's items that really needs to be addressed as quickly as we can.
Okay, thanks. I just was trying to get clarification on just like what is the urgency, and I appreciate that information. I mean, I think that the common denominator on all these items should be that they're urgent. I mean, and not just some of them, but all of them. And I know the council's $10,000 request for equipment is eminently required to go back to council chambers in a few weeks in order to continue to do hybrid work. So, you know, I think that they're all urgent. I'm just trying to get an understanding of, you know, what is just a finer point on that. So I appreciate that. Ms. Jalali.
My quick clarifying question so that I could make sure I understood Director McCarthy. You said there are three that stand out to you as most, and they're River Center, and what were the other ones?
Council President Bremo and Councilmember Jalali, River Center, the vaccine incentives, because that's a program that is imminently underway here, and then the administrative team for the grant itself.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just wanted to play back the tape quickly. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right, so there's, I think Ms. Nicker made a recommendation for a 1-week layover. And just, I'm gonna support that. Just one other comment that I forgot to mention earlier is that I think we knew there was a system for applications for urgent early projects that we wanted to get done probably ahead of a holistic plan. I think these are examples of things that came in that process. There's a tension between saying on one hand, we don't want to get things in a piecemeal one-off way, and then also not wanting things bundled together, which makes it harder to vote on things that maybe you want, but maybe you don't want. And so I think this extra week time will give us an opportunity to hash through some of those things offline and be able to come back and tie this up in a week one way or the other. So we'll speak in support of that. There's a motion made. Is there any more discussion on that motion? Ms. Yang?
Thank you. I just have a question, so it's not about the motion.
Okay.
Is that all right? Okay.
Sure.
I just have an unanswered question, so I wanted to ask that here. Can you share to us in terms of the line item for the libraries and parks, which facilities will the staff be working at? Because I think it's really important for us to make sure that we are providing more staff in areas of higher poverty rates as well, knowing that, you know, a lot of our families there are looking for things to do and aren't getting the same type of opportunities compared to other areas that are doing well off. And so would you be able to share that info to us?
Council President and Councilmember Yang, that's a great question. I know Barb Sporline from Public Libraries is here, and I'm wondering if Barb might be able to respond to that.
Yes, thank you, Council President Brenmo and council members. We do have a recommended schedule that restores the number of hours, but not the exact same schedule, so that we can do precisely what you're saying, which is build back smarter in terms of longer Saturday hours and some evening hours. So I can send you all a proposed schedule for all the branches. And it will, the proposal will restore all the hours lost during the pandemic to the pre-pandemic 2019 levels. So I'll be sure to get that to you.
Thank you. All right, we will look for that information in our inbox. There's been a motion and discussion. A roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to August 25th. Item 20 is Resolution 21-1181, recommending that the city explore a vaccination requirement for all city employees.
Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we talked about this quite a bit last week, so I will not go on at length about it, but I laid it over so that people could have notice of this since we brought it under suspension. And I'm glad. I appreciate my colleagues who are co-sponsoring this with me as well as supporting it. As we know, near every responsible government in America and probably the world is requiring either vaccination or mandatory consistent testing. And I think that's what we're calling on our HR to do and would like them to implement. In my opinion, at a minimum, it should be what the federal government is requiring, if not stronger in terms of a requirement of a vaccination or at least weekly testing, if not more often than that, since we know this Delta variant is very dangerous and it's spreading like wildfire across communities in the entire country and the entire world. Part of this too is I think we just need to lead by example. And we have such a forward-facing staff in our, libraries and our parks and our police department and our fire department and our EMTs. And for us to send unvaccinated individuals into the community, into helping people, especially young children who do not have the option of being vaccinated right now, unfortunately, I think it's irresponsible of us to do, and we should lead by example and make sure that we are sending vaccinated people in to help people. I think this is a pretty simple thing. I think, society has been pretty patient with people regarding the vaccination. We know it works. We know it's effective. We know it can help keep people out of the hospital, can help keep people not get sick, and help stop the spread of the COVID variant, especially the Delta variant. So please get vaccinated, people, and also mask up. We have the ability to stop this and move on with our lives. And it just requires people being part of the solution. So I think the city of St. Paul can lead by that. And I would ask us to pass this resolution and for HR to have something in place by September when some of staff is likely to come back. Some more of the staff is likely to come back and still be out in the community. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Tolbert. Thank you for your leadership on this matter. And I will point out to my colleagues that this will come with a fiscal note. We will see this coming back before us probably before September with costs coming out of ARP, which is appropriate, but just kind of a reminder that this is how things bubble up. So I am fully supportive. I appreciate your leadership. I speak in support. Look to see if anyone else has comments. Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves approval. Roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 21 is final adoption of ordinance 21-27, amending legislative code chapters 60, 63, 65, and 66 pertaining to off-street parking requirements.
All right, and this matter is before us for final vote after a public hearing was closed on August 11th. And I see Mr. Johnson's in the house. If we have final questions or comments before we move to a vote. Mr. Tao? Did you have your hand up?
Council President. Thank you. I just want to make a couple of points here that was brought to my office. We've heard concern about the tear down of residential home and turning them into parking lot. I heard this concern, and we had the PD team. They staff did incredible work on this, and they're able to include some of those concerns in this ordinance, as well as provide guidance for creating policy that would discourage this. I believe eliminating minimum parking requirement would create an incentive to purchase land to build more parking. I believe eliminating minimum parking requirement would not create an incentive to purchase land to build more parking. Without a minimum parking requirement, business could expand without needing to provide more parking. So they wouldn't need to acquire land to build parking if the business doesn't want to or need it. Additionally, business who want to purchase residential zone property for parking, they would need to rezone the property in order to build parking lot. So there's some process there for them. This process will allow for the public to address any concern. Because building parking on a residentially zoned parcel would require is rezoning, and an approach that district council would be able to add policy into the neighborhood plan against rezoning residential land for parking. I've raised this concern with staff, and they're ready to support the district council in their district plan. In addition, staff has also recommended including language on parking location into ordinance, which also address the concern. And that is section 63.303 regarding the parking location, where parking spaces for 1 and 2 family dwelling would be located on the same zoning lot that they are intended to serve. Off-street parking spaces for uses other than 1 and 2 family dwelling would be located on the same zoning lot as the building it is intended to serve, or within 500 feet of the building it is intended to serve, and in the same or a less restricted zoning district as the principal use, or within a more restricted zoning district, providing the principal use is also an allowed use in that zone. So I really appreciate the work of the staff, taking the time to review the community's input and to provide this addition. Finally, I also heard concern about allowing businesses to use our street, and I definitely understand the challenges in a growing city, and hope this ordinance will also force us as a community to be less dependent on our car and spur investment in reliable transit system for our city, the metro, and the state. Our current system brought us the global climate crisis, and we have to act fast to protect our environment. And so I think this is one of the friendly policy that will help us to get there as well. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. I really, I really appreciate that you came out swinging there. I agree with a lot of the things you said in the beginning when you said it's not an incentive. Then you're like, it is an incentive. I was like, yes. So thank you very much for starting out here today at this hearing. I see Ms. Jalali, Ms. Naker, and then Ms. Yang.
Great. I am excited to add to the enthusiasm. There are some things that we've received as part of our staff report and discussion around this that I think are worth reinforcing today as we take this very important vote. First is that 31% of our city's emissions can be attributed to vehicle travel. This is a core policy to address our imperative requirement to take on climate change and to act on climate. Under our current parking rules, if you build a new bar, which let's think about that, right? That's a business designed to serve alcohol and impaired driving. Nearly 2/3 of the site would need to be parking for drivers under our current rules. And that just doesn't make any sense. This would change that. And even more common commercial spaces require about 40% of the land to be parking. This really spreads out the elements of our community. It has contributed to parts of the city that I represent along a major light rail corridor being really big parking lots with lots of space between them. If you walk around the Midway, it's lot after lot after lot along the Green Line. And actually, when a lot of folks have talked about crime on the light rail, it's actually not crime on the light rail. It's crime happening in parking lots that go unattended at night, and all the shoppers go away, but they are darker and they just happen to be along a train line, and it gets unfairly misattributed to the train. So there's just a lot of implications for how our built environment ends up looking. And also we know that folks who need to be able to get around without a car and actually don't have as much choice in the matter often are forced into those cycles of dependency on car ownership because of how we've just made it too easy for everyone else to have one who could otherwise be maximizing transit or otherwise taking other modes. So I want to just point to that. I think it's a racial and climate equity imperative. I was very enthusiastic about that last week, and we'll do this again this week because it's just, it's very important. This is notable, and I appreciate us taking this up. And thank you to Tony and all the staff who've led this. This is literally years of work in the making. So very happy to vote yes today. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Jalali. Ms. Naker, Ms. Yang, then Ms. Prince.
Thanks, Council President. I just want to add my voice to the chorus of enthusiasm that I'm hearing here. You know, this is smart policy. It's forward-thinking policy. It's good for the environment. It's good for small businesses, and it's good for all of us. And at the same time, it's also going to be really hard for all of us. And I think what I've been hearing my colleagues today say easy and hard. I saw a lot of that in the testimony that we received, that this is really going to be a change. And I think it's absolutely true that it is going to be a difficult change, but it's the kind of difficulty that we need to move in the right direction. And one of my constituents wrote, and I want to quote it because I thought it was so well put. She wrote, "We will not choose to give up the comforts to which we are so accustomed. We have to adjust to the comforts becoming more scarce or less convenient." And I think that's exactly right. So in voting today, I'm thinking of the many small business owners who have reached out to me on the West Side and West 7th to say, I cannot operate because I cannot fit my required parking into this tiny historic lot or historic building that I have that was never designed for this. The costs are prohibitive. I can't open. And also for the residents who've reached out to say, this is not how we want to be spending our very scarce and valuable city land anymore. So looking forward to voting yes.
Thank you, Ms. Naker. Ms. Yang, then Ms. Prince.
Thank you. I want to say thanks to the staff, the leaders, and especially the voices of people who got us to where we are today. I think that's something that's really important to highlight. And also, it was so joyful being able to read the testimonies of people who are in support of this. I can tell, like, through their voices, this was so long overdue, and it really is. I do want to point out, when you drive or you bike, walk along Phelan Boulevard, it's one of the examples in Ward 6 where we have many buildings with excess parking spaces that take up a lot of land but remain largely unused. And when I think about this, it's all the more reason why I support this. The eliminating the parking minimums, because as somebody who came from a refugee family of farmers and represents a large community of immigrants, refugees, and farmers as well, like I think of the possibility of us having more space for community gardens or spaces for communities to convene together and to bond together. And with this elimination of parking minimums, we can create so much more for our communities. And also studies have shown that empty parking spaces don't add value to our community. There's so much more that we can create. And I think, what I mentioned earlier is just one of many examples. I do want to add that, to echo some of the things that Councilmember Tao mentioned, that by eliminating parking requirements, we allow for more space for businesses and infrastructure. A space that would have gone to extra parking can instead be used for housing. Eliminating parking minimums means we will still have parking, but what's important is that we'll have parking that is intentional and based on need as well, which is something that hasn't been looked at before. And so just want to say thanks, and I'm really excited for this and excited to see it move forward as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Yang. Ms. Prince.
You're on mute, Ms. Prince.
I appreciate everyone's thoughts today. And I will be speaking to the fact that I think we should be doing a reduction and not an elimination. And I base that on the fact that when Mr. Johnson gave his presentation to us on August 4th, he was clear that the original study was the reduction study, and that the reduction meets all of the city's policy goals and all of the city's climate goals. And I want you to understand that it meets all of our policy goals and all of our climate goals. The elimination came from it coming forward to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission believing that having one standard, the elimination of minimums, would just make things easier. So I want to be clear on what we're voting on today. We have an option that allows us to meet all of our policy goals and all of our climate goals. And now I'm going to speak as someone who represents a pretty big chunk of the East Side. And, when you talk about getting people out of their cars and into transit, when you're downtown or west of 35E, you've got real transit options. You have routes that go somewhere. The East Side transit corridors are highly insufficient. The headways in most of my community there aren't any frequent lines in my side of town. So I think it's good to say, let's get people out of their cars and into transit if transit is there for you to take. Secondly, and perhaps, well, I think it's also really important to note that we have very much built out our bike plan on the west side of the city and have not done an extensive build out of the bike plan on the east side of the city. So between the fact that transit is not highly available and the Metro Transit experience, I have to say, is another thing that's exceedingly frustrating for me. I have 400 East African families who live in the Afton View apartments. For 6 years, I have been trying to get them a transit shelter that Metro Transit says they just simply can't have because there aren't enough people boarding at that location. Then last week, I called Metro Transit to say, we need trash pickup in our bus shelters. There are neighborhoods that just really are looking poorly because of there's no trash pickup. Metro Transit said, oh, sorry, we only have trash pickup on the green line, the blue line, the A line, and the C line. So I think before we start talking about the sort of magic of getting people out of their cars and into transit, we need to look at the very inequitable service differences that exist in this city. And the east side compared to the rest of the city is like its own city when it comes to transit. So in any case, I know that this is passing today. My proposal, as I said a couple of weeks ago, was that we pass reductions today and we move to elimination when the Rush Line and the Gold Line are completed in a few years. And when we know that Metro Transit will be looking at creating a better network on the east side. But in the meantime, I don't totally object to elimination. I just do not think it's necessary when our own staff is telling us we meet all of our policy objectives and all of our climate objectives with reduction. And I also want to say, I think it's a little bit fantastical to think that market rate housing and big box retail is going to, because we have eliminated minimums, is suddenly going to create less parking. The parking lot at Target in the Midway is gigantic. That parking was built to allow parking on their busiest day of the year. That is a business decision that Target makes. They are not respecting the city's requirements of what they need to build. So we're going to have market rate housing going in around town with people having adequate off-street parking. And we are deciding that everybody else will search for a parking space. So I'll leave you with that today, and I realize I'm alone in that opinion, but I am making this point on behalf of my underserved constituents on the east side.
Oh, I do. Ms. Prince, I can't help but say that I'm really appreciative of how much you have come around on bike routes and supporting infrastructure. I know when you talk about that the bike infrastructure and the bike plan is not as built out on the east side, I think that has something to do with past policymakers not supporting it. And so I think that these changes are coming, but I know when you drive down Wheelock Parkway on the Grand Round, it stops dead at Ward 6 because of previous decisions, and that could be connecting to Payne-Phelan or to Lake Phelan. And so these changes, these incremental changes are getting us where we want to go because the bike rides on the east side are fantastic. And connecting to transit routes is important. So I guess just noting, I appreciate that I know in the beginning of your time in the office, had more hesitancy and now have really come to embrace that infrastructure. And I want to call it out and appreciate it. I see Mr. Tolbert has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I've been a supporter of getting rid of some of these parking minimums for a while. I think one, because it's a big impediment for affordable housing. It's also important for our sustainability goals. And lastly, it does help small businesses. We've seen some small businesses really run into trouble with the parking minimums and not being able to meet them. And lastly, I think the most important thing to note here is this does not prohibit parking from being built, and it will not prohibit parking from being built. I think the free market in itself, quite frankly, will take care of a lot of the parking, and it will be very similar. Most buildings, new buildings being built, will add the parking because they know their customers and their renters or their condo owners will want a stall for their parking for a car that they want to own. Not for everybody, but most would. And so I think the free market does offer a scale of protection. The one thing in my questions throughout, and I think they've been misinterpreted based on the emails that I've gotten from staff and constituents, but my questions have been more because our parking minimums and our parking requirements have been integrated into our city code throughout, for better or for worse. I'm not taking a stance on that, but they have been integrated into that. And I wanted to ensure that, as someone who's been on this council for 10 years, I wanted to ensure that we were crossing our T's and dotting our I's to ensure that we unintegrated all those things and had policy solutions for all of them. I have been assured by the city attorney's office and PED, and that the only integration of parking minimums into a different ordinance or policy that has not been resolved is the stormwater one that Mr. Johnson mentioned probably 2 weeks ago, I believe, maybe last week. And I did email Wes Saunders Pierce. It sounds like he hadn't been connected. He's probably one of the best stormwater experts in the entire country, and we're lucky to have him in the city. I hope PD puts it on the top of their list to work with him and resolve this before we start other big initiatives, because I do think it is an important thing. Even if it doesn't happen often, we know Murphy's Law, it will happen right away if we don't have a policy solution for it. But that is the only one, and I've been assured by PD and the city attorney's office that is the only unclosed loop that we have. And I will give both Mr. Pereira and Mr. Johnson a chance, or the city attorney's office, to jump in if I am incorrect about that. And that's the most important thing to me, is that we've done our due diligence and written this appropriately. Doesn't look like I have anything to say, so I'll keep that on the record. And I think that is important for me to know, because if one pops up, it is then we will know that it was checked by our PD and our city attorney's office. But I'm supportive of this for the reasons I stated at the start: the affordable housing sustainability and our small business growth, and look forward to passing it.
Thank you, Mr. Tolbert. And I guess I would just add, I agree. I'm supportive of this. I'm going to vote for it today. I've been supportive of it and throughout these conversations. When Mr. Tolbert and I started on the council, there was a famous vote against allowing Cupcake to open on Grand Avenue because there weren't ample parking spots for it. And I just remember at the time thinking it was absurd in a neighborhood that was so walker oriented and bike oriented and had such density that I think they were short like 1 or 2 spots, and they had like a plan to share with a dry cleaning place. And I was pretty new here and I was like, what the heck is going on? This seems insane. And I think at the time was like, I voted with my heart because it just seemed wrong. And ultimately, I think it ended up in some sort of we did some strange gymnastics to get the zoning through, but it really did kind of open my eyes to the barriers that parking requirements added to places especially in high density areas. But even some of our local schools have gigantic parking lots in front of them, and it's just an opportunity to rethink what's the actual need versus what is some arbitrary number that has been established in a time gone by. So I'm excited to look at this in the future. I agree with what Mr. Tolbert said. There are places that need parking, we'll add parking. Places that won't. And I know some community members have raised concern that this will push traffic into residential areas, but I do think in a lot of ways the market helps control that, because I know we choose sometimes where we go based on if we can park our bike, if we can park our car, if we can walk there. And so I'm hopeful, but I think we're moving in the right direction. So I will also be supporting this today. Are there any other thoughts before we take a motion from Ms. Jalali? All right, Ms. Jalali.
No, I took myself off mute to move approval. So
Okay.
yes.
All right. So moved by Ms. Jalali. Roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
No.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, being Councilmember Prince. The ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Tony.
Item 22 is final adoption of ordinance 21-31, granting the application of St. Albans LLC to rezone property at 695 Grand from B2 Community Business District to T3 Traditional Neighborhood District, amending Chapter 60 of the Legislative Code pertaining to the zoning map, and denying the rezoning of the EG East Grand Avenue Overlay District.
In this item, had a public hearing that was extended and then closed last week. The matter was laid over. And it is before us for our final vote today. I'll start with Ms. Jalali.
Great. Well, I am grateful to speak today and know that we have received a lot of public comment. I really appreciate people reaching out to our office. I wanted to just reiterate my support for this project and speak to a lot of the same points that I raised last week. I really tried hard to communicate, and what I really do believe is that this is exactly the type of development that is good for commercial corridors like Grand Avenue. It's the type of development that commercial corridors in areas of the ward that I represent, like up Snelling and along University, have also benefited from and would like to keep benefiting from, because I think it brings needed customers to parts of the city that have lots of neighborhood businesses. I have constituents who've reached out because they have businesses on Grand Avenue and they want to see them continue to stay there. And we know that the economic impacts of the pandemic have affected a lot of local businesses' ability to hang on. And so being able to add housing where there are also transit improvements and a lot of clusters of local businesses is how you create neighborhoods. It's how you create diversity. It's how you create a range of people in different parts of the city being able to live there. And also to the questions raised about the affordability of the project, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is that this is being proposed on a old restaurant that is going out of business or gone now, and a parking lot in an area of the community that is generally significantly wealthier and more affluent than other neighborhoods in the city, and that having market rate housing in those neighborhoods actually helps absorb both income diversity in that part of town, but also it allows for more range of housing throughout the community and for density oriented projects in other parts of the community that maybe have experienced historical disinvestment to also be at more of a mix of affordability. And I just think this is still a conversation we can have with the developer, because today allows for the progress to keep continuing. The Planning Commission recommendation supported a compromise of not taking them out of the overlay district and to talk about coming back for a variance. And that was another reason I spoke in support last week. And in an ideal world, we would have an inclusionary zoning ordinance that would allow us to require a certain percentage of affordable units in this building, or to capture basically like a compliance fee that could then be used to fund other projects throughout the city. So we don't have that yet, but we are working on studying that. And I think that's really important. I still think this project is good enough and deserves support today. And so I'm speaking to make a motion to approve it and to vote yes on the item. I really appreciate everyone who has reached out after all the hard work of engagement that has happened. I want to appreciate Councilwoman Naker, who is also approaching this situation, listening to her constituents. I respect that, but I will motion to approve the item today. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Jalali. And I will just say that I appreciate that motion. I know that this is not will not be a unanimous vote, but I think for purposes of clarity in the record, that an affirmative motion on this item is helpful, just for understanding, for the community to understand and for us to understand our records later. So thank you for making that motion. And again, we can speak to or against what's been put on the table. Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. And thanks, Councilmember Jalali. I appreciate your comments and your thoughtfulness about this. And I, to your point, am listening to my constituents, although I will say I have constituents and people who I very much admire and respect on all sides of this issue. So as I'm sure we all do. So as I mentioned last week, I entirely support increasing density at this location, and I support redevelopment at this location. And I am immensely grateful to the owner and the developer for their hard work on this project, and their investment in St. Paul, to the Summit Hill Association and the Planning Commission for their extremely diligent work on this, which I have pored over at length, meeting minutes, recordings multiple times as I've considered this issue. As I said last week, I believe our responsibility here is to choose from among the wide range of zones in our code. And the reasons that we have all of those different types of zones is because we recognize as a city that each of our neighborhoods is distinct, and even each area within neighborhoods is distinct. And when we're asked to rezone a parcel, it's our responsibility to choose from amongst that range of zones and determine which one fits best in a particular area. And this rezoning is being proposed because of a particular project, which Ms. Jalali mentioned. But the rezoning we decide on today is going to stay with this land regardless of what is built on it. So when I'm thinking about this rezoning, it's really in terms of what fits best on this parcel rather than what zoning is going to allow a particular building to be built or not. And as I mentioned last week, for all the reasons that I mentioned last week, which I won't elaborate on again here, it seems clear to me that T2 zoning is the more appropriate choice than T3 zoning. And so I will be voting against the motion.
I think Amy dropped off.
Yeah.
I saw Councilmember Yang, Councilmember Tower both raised their hand. While she comes back, I think Councilmember Yang was first.
That's never happened before. That was weird. Bye. I wanted to ask Ms. Naker before we move on. Was there a staff report you wanted along with that remark, or was that? I know that there was some conversation about T2.
No, I don't need a staff report, but I know Mr. Pereira is here if people have questions about. I know the zoning and the overlay have led to a lot of questions, and over the last week, I know folks have been asking a lot of those around the table too. So, but I didn't need a staff. Okay,
I'm sorry for my whole thing just closed. It was weird. So want to make sure that there was not that request. Okay, thank you. Ms. Yang had a hand up.
Thank you. I definitely have a lot on my mind, and to share it all, it basically would just recap that I shared the same feelings that I do from last week. So I won't be supporting the motion today, and I also again want to name how important it is for our city to be a place where people across all incomes can live in every single neighborhood, and it's just not for some. I think that the upzoning for this, were it to pass, it would continue to perpetuate certain neighborhoods that only folks with certain incomes can move into. And that's definitely against my values that I hold as I do my work around equity. Also, to the point about later on we'll have a conversation about affordability and try to put that into and squeeze that into the proposal. I'm not sure whether that will happen. I had a conversation with someone from the developer's office because they've been contacting us. You may all have had conversations with them as well, and they're set on their on the upzoning, and if they don't get the upzoning, then they're going to walk away from the project. And so, to me, it's always a red flag when we have developers who have the mindset of it's all or nothing, and I think that the reason why that's really problematic to me is because to me housing is a human right, and I think that it's important for us to be developing cities that meet the needs of folks in our communities, especially those who are struggling the most. And so I won't be supporting the upzoning today were it to pass. I hope that folks will come together and you know, work to make this a proposal that would work for all folks in our community here.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. Ms. Prince and then Mr. Tao. Ms. Prince, are you speaking? I don't trust my, okay, there you are.
Yeah, thanks. Commissioner Riley, who was a former member of our planning team at PED, provided a letter that was extremely important and compelling to me on a number of points. He makes the point that the rezoning is inconsistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan, the land use chapter, the transportation, and the housing chapter. And it's my feeling that it is also inconsistent with the zoning code. Grand is not ID'd as a potential urban village, which would be reflected in T3 zoning, nor is this part of Metro Transit's high frequency network, which would also compel us to look at Ward 3. The record shows no consideration given to the fact that this site is both a state designated and local heritage preservation district. Like Mr. Riley and Councilmember Yang, I believe it is possible for this developer to achieve this project within T2 rezoning and with a floor area ratio of 3.0. And his unwillingness is based on the profitability of the project, which I have to remind my colleagues is not a basis to be granting as variances when they come before us. Neighborhood opposition in this case painfully far outweighs neighborhood support. And while we routinely determine when we make difficult zoning decisions that people just need to suck it up and go along with our interpretation of the laws and the comp plan, I do want to remind my neighbors that developers don't build community, neighbors do. So I will be voting against the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Mr. Tao?
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to be voting in support of this, and I want to thank the staff for their hard work on this, the district council, community leaders, the developers, and the engagement process. You know, I think in Ward 1, we've had the opportunity, the luck of having the Vintage and even the Ryan development over at Selby and Snelling. And that has really created a lot of density there, but it's what we need in St. Paul right now, and especially in those commercial districts, to come back to support those businesses, especially with the pandemic that we have in the downturn last couple of years here. And so I think this development makes sense, and it gives the developer some flexibility, but it also, it's not the end of the project. It's just still a lot of other steps and processes that the developer and the community, this council can still come together to work on this to make sure this project works. Now, I was hoping that all development in St. Paul, all housing development in St. Paul will have some sort of affordable housing. But I'm also glad to see that this developer has also have a history of creating affordable unit. Unfortunately, it's not in this district or in this project. The Grand Avenue, you know, we as council member, we know that the neighborhoods in St. Paul supports our downtown. And we are the opposite of Minneapolis. Minneapolis, their downtown support the city. And so strategically, we need to continue to invest in the neighborhood to strengthen the neighborhood where we're already strong, so that we can continue to create the tax revenue and the tax base that we need to continue to support downtown and the city overall. And so having density in this area will allow people from across the city and other parts of the metro area that wants to move into St. Paul to spend their hard-earned dollar along Grand Avenue. It's going to be good for that. It's going to be good for the Del Selby corridor and all the way along for the University Avenue. It's going to have a positive effect. So I'm happy to support this. And I really appreciate the work that's been done by the staff and all the folks that's involved.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. Mr. Tolbert.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the comments by all my colleagues. I believe that the rezoning of this site is appropriate and that T3 is an appropriate zoning for the site, and to make, I know the legal basis in the documents are in the agenda and outlined in those, and I think the detailed reasoning and legal basis for that are laid out there, and I would incorporate those. I don't think I need to reiterate them, but I agree with that basis for the rezoning here. I think the mass and the scale and the height are appropriate for Grand Avenue, especially this part, and are appropriate for this portion of Grand Avenue. I think there are multiple buildings very close to this one that are similar in scale to the T3 zoning. I think Grand Avenue has great transit access, and hopefully that will continue to improve, which aligns right in with T3 zoning. Grand Avenue is both a commercial corridor and has residential uses on the street. That's what makes it unique. And on the immediately adjacent street. T3 zoning would allow for both commercial and residential uses, and they align extremely well with the current and historical uses of the street. I think one of the things about Grand Avenue that is often reiterated is how unique it is, because every building's a little bit different, and having different buildings throughout is also a good thing. I think other things, the proposed rezoning of the development had a long community process. The developer has worked with the Summit Hill Association on neighborhood engagement, appeared before the district council, answered questions, worked on modifications to the building being proposed to address some of the neighbors' concerns. I think the Planning Commission and the Zoning Committee spent an extensive amount of time evaluating this proposal and pushing back on the proposed rezoning, as well as the specific proposed project. With both the Summit Hill Association supporting this and the Planning Commission supporting this, I think some of that early conversation was good. In addition to the legal basis discussed on this and incorporated as part of this resolution, I think the other thing is we're growing as a city, and I think that's a good thing. And in order for us to grow strategically and successfully, we need to both have economic growth and more housing. And this rezoning allows both of those things to happen. And I will continue to reiterate that we all want more housing, and if we want more housing, we have to vote for more housing too. And I would support and encourage, people who have a history in the city, who have supported local businesses, to continue to invest in our communities. I think this local investment and growth is essential to ensure that we can continue to create more housing opportunities for all income levels across the city. And so I'll be supporting this, and I think it's good. I think it is, I know a lot of engagement and thought has gone into this, and I appreciate my colleagues who we disagree on a policy level on this one. I think that there were some very thoughtful reasons of why on that, but I respectfully disagree and will be voting for this and supporting Councilmember Jalala's motion.
All right, and any other comments before you go to a vote? And I won't repeat what's been said here. I will just say that I will be voting in support of Ms. Jalali's motion. I guess I am going to repeat that I do. I sincerely appreciate the work with the developer and the community, with the Summit Hill Association this passed through the Zoning Committee and the Planning Commission as well. And I respect and appreciate the recommendations from all of those entities. And I also understand that change is hard. And we have this conversation often at the council table. And so I would just say we're voting to change zoning here today, but that doesn't mean that the project is signed, sealed, and delivered. There's plenty of opportunities to stay engaged as we move forward through this project. And so we can end up with something that people are excited about and in their neighborhood. So I'll leave it at that. As I said, I will be voting in support as well. There is a motion on the table from Ms. Jalali. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
No.
Prince,
No.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
No.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
4 in favor, 3 opposed. Those opposed being Council Members Naker, Prince, and Yang. The ordinance is adopted. Item 23, Resolution Public Hearing 21-199, approving the application of Shine in the World Ministries for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 2nd to the 5th at 75 Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Minnesota State Capitol.
All right, and this is a sound level variance. The public hearing's been held virtually. As such, Ms. Naker would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 24, Resolution Public Hearing 21-200, approving the application of Dual Citizen Brewing for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 11th at 725 Raymond Avenue.
And this public hearing's been held virtually. As such, Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 25, Resolution Public Hearing 21-201, approving the application of Film Score Fest for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 4th at 221 5th Street East, Mears Park.
This public hearing was held virtually. As such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 26, Resolution Public Hearing 21-203, accepting Metropolitan Council and Department of Employment and Economic Development grants, amending the 2021 city budget upon acceptance of said grant, and approving and authorizing execution of a grant agreement and other necessary documents.
And this public hearing's been held virtually. As such, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 27, Resolution Public Hearing 21-202, approving the application of Compassionate Action for Animals for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 19th at 200 Dr. Justice O'Haig Boulevard, Harriet Island Regional Park.
And this public hearing has been held virtually. As such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 28, Resolution Public Hearing 21-204, approving the application of Selby Avenue Jazz Fest R. Michael Wright for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 11th at 934 Selby Avenue.
And this public hearing has been held virtually. As such, Mr. Tao would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brindamon.
Aye.
7 in favor, none opposed. Public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 29, Resolution Public Hearing 21-205, approving the application of MDVA for a sound level variance in order to present amplified sound on September 10th and 11th, 2021 at 75 Reverend Dr. Luther Martin King Jr., Minnesota State Capitol, Upper Mall.
And this public hearing has been held virtually. As such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brindamon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 30 is Resolution Public Hearing 21-207, approving the application of Minnesota Recovery Connection for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound on September 18th at 75 Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, State Capitol, Upper and Lower Malls.
And this public hearing has been held virtually. As such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brindamon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31, Resolution Public Hearing 21-209, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department in the amount of $17,943.73. The reimbursement from Ramsey County Public Health for COVID-19 vaccinators.
All right, and this public hearing's been held virtually. As such, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brindamon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 32, Resolution Public Hearing 21-210, approving and authorizing acceptance of a grant from the McKnight Foundation in the amount of $4,000, amending the 2021 city budget in the amount of $4,000 upon acceptance of said grant, and approving and authorizing expenditure of the $4,000 grant for zoning studies in connection therewith.
All right, and this public hearing has been held virtually. As such, Ms. Yang moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brindamon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. The legislative hearing officer recommends adoption of the following resolutions as no objections to these recommendations were received. Item 33, RLH CO 21-5, 9 Alice Court. Item 36, RLH TA 21-297, 963 Como Boulevard East. Item 37, RLH BBR 21-49, 1233 Conway Street. Item 39, RLH TA 21-285, 854 Euclid Street. Item 40, RLH TA 21-301, 416 Fairview Avenue South. Item 41, RLH BBR 21-51, 1605 5th Street East. Item 42, RLH FCO. Oh, sorry, my page just dropped off. 21-114, 910 4th Street. Item 43, RLH TA 21-292, 15 Kellogg Boulevard West. Item 44, RLH RR 21-55, 975 Marshall Avenue. Item 45, RLH BO 21-33, 1132 Maryland Avenue East. Item 46, RLH RR 21-54, 1355 Payne Avenue. Item 49, RLH BBR 21-48, 1446 Rice Street. Item 50, RLH TA 21-290, 1426 Schaefer Avenue. Item 51, RLH BBR 21-50, 1490 7th Street East. Item 52, RLH BO 21-32, 754 Sherburne Avenue. Item 53, RLH TA 21-294, 605 Stryker Avenue. Item 54, RLH RR 21-42, 1004 Thomas Avenue. Item 55, RLH SAO 21-60, 1372 Victoria Street North. Item 56, RLH TA 21-293, 936 Westminster Street. Item 57, RLH AR 21-62, collection of vacant building registration. Item 58, RLH AR 21-63, securing and emergency boarding services. Item 58, RLH AR 21-64, 535 Forest Street. Item 60, RLH AR 21-65, fire certificate occupancy fees. Item 61, RLH AR 21-66, excessive use of inspection and abatement. Item 62, RLH AR 21-67, graffiti removal services. And the motion for all of these is to adopt them.
So moved by Mr. Tao. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objections to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendations were received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption. Item 34, RLH BO 21-31, 666 Arlington Avenue East. Item item 38, RLH TA 21-362, 77 Cook Avenue West. And item 46, RLH TA 21-295, 1880 Old Hudson Road. And the motion is to amend and adopt.
So moved by Ms. Prince. Ms. Sherry, just a quick question. Was item 46 also mentioned in your first grouping? And I don't want to give the impression that I listened that closely. Okay, but I know that was one that we had discussed as potentially, okay, just making sure. Thank you. So there's a motion by Ms. Prince. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to September 1st. Item 35, RLH TA 21-304, 554 Charles Avenue. And again, the motion is to continue the public hearing to September 1st.
So moved by Mr. Tao. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to September 1st. And for the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. Item 47, RLH TA 21-308, 1323 Payne Avenue, and there is a staff report.
Ms. Mormond.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. Just a very brief staff report. There is a statement in the record contesting the recommendation. This is a registered vacant building fee. It covers a 1-year time period for which the building spent the entire year in the vacant building program. It was in the vacant building program for 1 year and 2 days. The matter was in front of the council before as the original order to become a registered vacant building was appealed. The council decided at that time that it should be a registered vacant building and did a fee waiver of 90 days. We're 1 year in. The owner continues to make his case that it should not be considered a registered vacant building and he should not be subject to this fee. The rest is in the written statement, but that would be a summary of what it was. And I would say the council made its determination some months ago on the matter.
Thank you, Ms. Mormond. Are there questions for Ms. Mormond? All right, so no questions from Ms. Mormond. I'd look to Ms. Yang for motion.
Thank you. I did get a chance to look at the testimony, but at this time I would like to move forward the legislative officer's recommendation.
All right, so there's a motion from Ms. Yang. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted.
All right, and I think that brings us to the end of our agenda today. Yes, all right, and before we adjourn, I'd just like to offer the opportunity for folks to share news from the wards or things we can't miss this weekend or week. Ms. Prince.
Yeah, I'd like to share 2 great outdoor activities in Ward 7 on August 21st. That would be Saturday from 10 to 1. Lower Phelan Creek Project is holding its 4th annual Pollinator Festival down in the Walk-in Teepee Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary at 4th and Commercial. There'll be guided bird walks, live music, and guided plant walks, as well as some wonderful fry bread tacos, smoothie trucks, and so on and so on. So it's going to be a lovely day. And then also on August 21st, from 10 to noon, the Southeast Community Organization is doing a guided bike tour of gardens on the east side. And there's also a vehicle-based tour if people are not able to bike. But the stops include a number of residential rain gardens in the neighborhood, stop in Battle Creek, along with a historical review of watershed management in the area, and a look at the McKnight infiltration basins. So that's August 21st, 10 to noon, and go to the Southeast Community Organization website for additional details.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. And those are the kind of tours or kind of activities that sound a little heady on paper, but then when you get there are so fantastically interesting and enlightening. So thanks for sharing that. No, there's so much happening in the city right now, and we just passed all these sound level variances. Is there anything else before we adjourn today? Looks like no. All right. Thanks, folks. It was a big day. Appreciate your work here. And if there's nothing else to come before us, we are adjourned.